Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties from the Michigan Association of Counties.
Welcome to Podcast 83, podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. Hope everyone had a nice weekend. A lot of college football. We're coming up on a Monday night football game. We're recording this on a Monday. We got Monday night football with the Lions, Ravens, big game tonight. Hopefully the Lions keep up the momentum they had from last weekend. We're joined by our government affairs team from MAC, as always. Deena, Sam, Jimmy, how was the weekend?
Fantastic weekend. Went to a wedding in Sutton's Bay at a
Ooh.
winery. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, weather's held up this fall so far. Well, I guess officially today's the first day of fall, so I guess we've been in summer and now we're in fall, but it still looks like nice for the next few weeks too. So I hope everyone's able to get out and enjoy it. We've got our conference next week. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the last week here in Lansing. Jimmy, we had a press conference here last week. Tell us a little bit about what it was about and what the goals of it were.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Last week we hosted a press conference with the Community Mental Health Association, pushing back on the PIHP RFP process. So Senator Stabenow was there with us, along with other mental health organizations and labor organizations as well, just talking about the need to preserve the local control and to ensure that a lot of the folks in our communities are getting the services that they need from folks that understand them and understand their community. So this was in the backdrop of CMHA's typical Walk a Mile rally. And so that is just typically where they're going to spread awareness for folks having mental health issues and letting people know, again, walk a mile in my shoes to understand me. So having this press conference there was, really good way to kind of tee up the event. So the RFP process is closing on October 30th. So we have a little over a month. So we're hoping this press conference is going to get a little bit more traction here in the press, and we'll be able to start putting some pen to paper and getting some changes. So really happy we were able to do that.
Yeah, it was packed house, a lot of good speakers. Antoinette, Wallace, MAC's incoming president, was one of the speakers. She did a very nice job. She's from Macomb County. Various other speakers. Yeah, and that's an important note there too, that RFP's gotten extended now to October 30th. It originally was a September 30th due date. Now it's an October 30th due date. We do have Director Hertel coming to our conference next week. Unfortunately, it sounds like she's not able to comment much on the RFP process, is what she's saying. So we'll see how her presentation goes next week. Other than that, Deena, Sam, Jimmy, not much else got done in Lansing last week, right? We had session days. We were, coming up a week out from October 1st, a little more than a week out. Where are we at with budget, roads? Let's talk about it.
I mean, we're hearing a lot. We know that staff is meeting, and staff is meeting all day, every day. They're meeting on the weekends. They're trying to figure out where, each side can land, the House and the Senate, on a budget. We know the governor is back in town, and she wants to see them put a budget together. She held a press conference last week that said, I gave you my budget months and months ago. Let's get something done. So we think there's a deal, and then we don't think there's a deal. And we hear that it fell apart. Right now, this Monday before, we've got about a week left, like you said, we thought they were close to a deal on roads and on the state budget, maybe a little increase in revenue, even though we don't know what that revenue increase would look like. Thought they were really getting close. And then we heard today, it all fell apart. And I think it's really when the devil, the devil's in the details. When they really get down to the nitty gritty, they decide they can't live with one thing or another, and they have to dig in their heels. So here we sit, a week out. We don't have a budget. We're not in, great shape. We're not in terrible shape, but we're not in great shape. And everybody's preparing for a government shutdown.
Yeah, I mean, it's you have some weird things happening. Like we had a Senate session on a Monday today, which we don't normally have. What are we hearing about other session days for the rest of the time? Up until the budget, every day.
We're hearing every day through, what is it, October 17th? They're going to post and keep on negotiating from now until then.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, you said that we heard every day, and then they posted earlier that Senate isn't having session tomorrow, which it is Rosh Hashanah, so there's a holiday in there for Tuesday, Wednesday, which makes sense. But maybe it's every day after that or something like that. Well, I guess we'll see. Um,
We just got to play it by ear. And I think, we've seen many counties. Thank you very much for those counties who have passed a resolution in opposition to the cuts to revenue sharing. We greatly appreciate it. We have had many backroom conversations about what this budget really means to county revenue sharing. And, right now, the House cut it significantly. The Senate gave an increase. The governor gave a very small increase in her recommendation. I think at the end of the day, I'm hopeful, fingers are crossed. I'm getting positive feedback that maybe we'll get some revenue sharing reinstated. More than just what was allocated last year. But we won't know until the end of the day. And one of the reasons that we advocate for that revenue sharing trust fund is for situations just like this. The governor recommended an increase, but not on the entire amount. The Senate recommended an increase significantly, and it was fantastic and great news for counties. The House, when they passed their budget, although I know they did it so they could prove they could fund roads out of the general fund, they still cut county revenue sharing. So now at the end of the day, they'll go into conference committee. And when they get into conference committee, we have no idea what's going to happen. We don't know if, like we've seen in years past, they will have some pet projects and they're just going to cut revenue sharing to make those projects work, or if they will actually honor an increase in revenue sharing. But our revenue sharing trust fund bills would say this is the amount of money that goes into that trust fund every year, and it can only be used for revenue sharing. So we wouldn't be subject to, I want to fund this instead, or I'm going to cut this to, fund something, a pet project in different districts to get votes. We would track along with what we get out of sales tax, and that money would go straight into the fund, and it would have to be allocated out of that fund. The budget process always makes us very nervous. And in that kind of situation, if they could adopt those revenue sharing trust fund bills, we'd be in a better spot every single year.
Yeah, so that's still on the table. I mean, it doesn't have to be done with the budget either. It can be done through the policy bills. There's different options there with that. So it's the same but separate conversation, with policy bills. You got some violence prevention dollars out there that can go to sheriff's departments, not really directly to counties. So I think there's some concerns about that and how accessible those funds will be to counties. So I guess when it's all said and done, it's still up in the air. We don't really know. We won't know until we get closer. Could happen while we're at our conference. We'll stay close to it there and hopefully be able to provide more of a detailed update at that time. So, well, is there anything else we wanted to update folks on? Anyone?
Just a little concerned about what it means if the government shuts down. What services are going to be considered essential, which ones are not. What does that look like? So it could be Secretary of State's office closed, corrections system still operating and functioning. Delayed payments out to, local units of government, grant monies going out, permits, not going out in a timely manner. We're not really quite sure what it's going to look like. Depends on how long it goes.
Well, and the governor determines some of that too, right? She has the
Mhm.
ability to determine which is essentially central. So we'll see how that goes. Well, I guess we'll stay tuned and thanks for the update, everyone. And we will hopefully see you next week at our conference. If we don't, stay tuned for our next broadcast. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83.